Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. You're on Mo's Adventures. If you're new around here, my name's Mo. In this video, I've got a problem. I've got my Vevor diesel heater seemingly having excessive amounts of white smoke on startup. We're going to go ahead and try a few things here today to see if we can rectify this situation. Now, my suspicion is that because I have and tried out the fuel pump being lower than the heater itself, I believe that it worked really well to stop the air from entering the fuel lines and causing an airlock and all of that sort of thing. But it's working too well in a sense that it seems to be drawing a bit of a, I guess you could call it a siphon on the fuel from the tank, and it's kind of putting a bit too much fuel into the combustion chamber and causing it to smoke on startup until it gets hot. Now, once it gets hot, it seems to run really well, but I'm getting these very large amounts of white smoke and plumes coming out of the exhaust on the front of the shed, and I'm concerned that one of the neighbors is soon going to call the fire department thinking that my shed is on fire. So we don't want that, obviously. There's two things that I want to try to rectify this situation. One of them, like I just mentioned, is going to be moving that heater up to a higher location, more than likely somewhere towards the top of the tank, and then I'll just drip loop the fuel line into the heater. The other thing, which I don't think is going to make a big difference, but it is going to bring the noise level down in the shed because it will be much quieter, is I bought another exhaust for a boat. It's a through hull, so it goes through the hull of the boat, and it just enables you to exhaust your diesel heater if you're using it in a boat setting. We're going to use this. We don't need to drill a massive hole like we did for the exhaust, and if you want a pretty good solution to putting your exhaust through the outside of a building, check out my other video. As for this one, this is going to be used as an intake. I'm just going to simply drill out the hole. Pretty much the same as this diameter right here is all we need to do. Put the 3 screws in it. I'll put the clamp for the combustion intake on this side, and that's as simple as that. It's going to be real quick and easy. So you'll pretty much only have at that point the noise from the fan motor of the heater itself. It's going to significantly quiet down the shed. I guess there will also be the clicky clack of the fuel pump there as well. We can't seem to get rid of that noise, but it's not excessively loud. I mean, if you're coming out to any kind of a workshop, whether that's a shed, a garage, or an actual shop, you're going to be making noise anyways, or you're going to have a radio playing, so I don't think it's a huge deal. Lastly, I have this power supply. Now, I only bought this to try it out. I don't think that this is the best route to go in terms of powering this diesel heater. I do believe that it's worth saying. Using a battery and a battery charger is probably your best option, due to the fact that it will then have the capability of cooling the heater down still if there were ever a loss of power. This is just going to be for testing purposes. It was cheap enough anyways. I just figured we'd do an unboxing on this thing. It's a Vevor. I had to write down I guess it's right here. Vevor power supply. Or Vevor? I don't know how you pronounce it. DC power supply. This model is the SPS 3011. The input voltage is 110 volts plus or minus 10% at 60 hertz. Puts out 13.8 volts and up to 30 amps. For reference, these heaters with the glow plugs running will consume up to 15 amps. A lot of these power supplies, from what I could see on Amazon, were 10 amps, and I needed something that could do up to 15. So the next jump of typical power supplies was 30 amps for a reasonable price. There was a specific 15 amp power supply, but it was like $300 or something crazy, so I wasn't buying that one. We'll do a quick unboxing of this unit at the end of the video. As for right now, we're going to get started and move that fuel pump up to a higher location. We're going to have to put a new fuel line on because we are extending the range. So we'll do that quick and easily, and then we will move on to drilling a hole in the door for our intake. I still got a bunch of their fuel line left over. They really do give you quite a bit of this stuff to, I mean, do what you need to do. My arm span is probably a lot, so I mean, there's probably another 8 feet of hose here. I'm like an eagle. Bald eagle! Alright, so how are we going to do this without making a big mess in here of diesel fuel, is the question. Well, I think I can get away with leaving our suction line on and filter. I'll unscrew the fuel pump. Now I am going to spill a little bit here. I can get this out of here. That doesn't need to be there. So what I'm going to try to do here is leave our suction fuel line and fuel filter in place. And then hopefully, with the pump actually not running right now, I'll be able to take the feed line off between the pump and the heater, and hopefully not too much is going to leak through there. So first of all, I'm going to start with taking the power off of there, which is quite easy. I didn't need to pull that clip off, actually. What I should have done was I should have pushed on it, because when you push on it, it actually separates those ears and moves them away. So the proper way to have done that would have been to push on it and pull it off. All right, here we go. Don't really need to worry about taking the clamps off. The fuel's not going to come out of there right away. These hoses are on there quite well. Lost a small amount of fuel out of the heater itself, but as you can see, there's enough of a vacuum here. This line is still quite full of fuel. There's only a small bubble on the end of it. The actual diaphragm in the pump will be enough to hold the fuel from the tank back. Good grief. I don't know if I should just cut that. You bollocks bastard. We're gonna pull it. And that's why I had the paper towel on the end, because as soon as you break that seal, it's gonna pour fuel out of there. Now I didn't spill a drop other than spraying myself with fuel when it flicked back at me there. I guess I did spill a few drops. A couple drops of fuel on the ground, so if you're working in maybe a camper van or something like that where there's a carpet, just make sure that you put something down. You know, I've just got this little rubber mat down on the ground, and that's sufficient. All right, let's yard this pump out of here. Oh, I am going to have to pull that fuel line off of there too. Son of a salamander. Because there's not enough space between the door and that bracket. Well, that's okay. I think I might have another suitable trick up my sleeve. I'll have a quick look at the part number on this thing to see if it tells us the dosage. It should tell us the dosage of this pump in milliliters. It actually has a fuel flow direction indicator on it, which I didn't realize, because I remember looking at the other units there. CNMZ-23, 12 volt, 18.5. Is it milliliters? 18.5 milliliters, that's how much the dosage is? I don't know, something like that. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to put something on the actual fuel line coming from the bottom of the tank to pinch it off. Alright, so all I'm going to do is put this pair of vice grips with some tape on them. That way the actual teeth of the vice grips don't puncture the fuel line. And it doesn't need to be super crazy tight by any means or anything like that. I'm going to put this paper towel around it, give it a pull, and that'll also stop the fuel from spraying too much. Yeah, it looks about like that. So we're going to go just like this here. And I have to open up this wiring harness again now and take out a loop or two for the fuel wire. I like to keep the wiring harness on the top there so that if it were to ever leak fuel, it's not going to leak into the wiring harness. This also gives us the opportunity to tidy up the wire for the controller. I might go ahead and put some wire staples or something on here eventually, but for right now, I want to just try and see if this is going to work and get this video done. Good enough for who it's for. Absolutely no issue putting the fuel line on now. I'm going to leave a little bit of extra fuel line there as well, so as not to get kinked off at the bottom like the other units do. We'll tidy these fuel lines up a little bit by just tying them together. Alright, and now with our fuel pump reallocated to a higher elevation, I'm now going to move on to testing it. So I just want to run it through a quick cycle, make sure that it works, and then we'll move on to installing the combustion gas air intake. I still never did find out what you got to do to try to get this thing to go into fuel pump prime mode. Power.
Start heating.
We're in manual mode here. I've got the manual set to number 10, which is fully on. Oh, we have ignition now. Very, very minor amount of smoke coming out. So the fuel ends up kind of pooling up at the bottom here. And this is the exact same way that the other heaters ran. So they collected the fuel about here, and this just bubble kind of moved back and forth as it felt like it. And I never had any issues with those heaters. So you can see the fuel just trickling down the line there, and you know, it's enough to siphon out of the fuel tank and into the pump, and then from the pump we've got a big drip loop that comes down, and that should stop the fuel from self-siphoning into the heater, causing a very smoky startup. That is the hope with this setup going forward. The other camera is going to tell the story if any smoke came out of there or not. But typically before, it had a very, very smoky startup. Like, it was significant and worrisome, to the point where 75 feet away at the back door I could smell the diesel from there. So obviously that's not good. Now the next thing we're going to do is install our air vent going to the outside. Let's see if it fits. It does fit, but just it's not super tight. It's very loose. I think a gear clamp on that will solve that. So I was thinking of putting this plate just on the outside of this. Now it wouldn't look as good. It wouldn't have this, well, I guess it's all full of fingerprints, but it wouldn't have that nice chrome finish. But I would be able to sandwich between this plate and this plate a piece of like window screen or something, instead of trying to rig this thing up on the end of it for a look similar to that. But then that also just leaves you with this small hole, whereas this has more surface area to allow the air to come in. And you could also cut some of this plastic too, because if you take this thing apart, this is just a screen inside of here. I could cut some more of these holes if I found that these are starting to plug up with frost or something. This really is just a screen to keep the debris out. I did call it a muffler in my other videos, which I guess it does maybe muffle a little bit of noise, but it is a screen. Alright, let's move on. I'm going to go outside and mark a spot for the hole that we're going to drill for this. It's going to be quick and easy. My thoughts were, I want it in the bottom corner of the door to get it away from the exhaust. Maybe shoot for somewhere in here. I think that this screen or muffler, we're just going to have to attach that at a later date, because I'm going to need every bit of this air intake hose to get it as far away from the exhaust as possible. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is, as they say. We're just going to eyeball this and drill a hole, so just got to get the insulation out of here. It's going to end up coming out in pieces, I guess. Now that we're through, that's going to go like that. What we're going to do here, right quick, fast, and in a hurry, we're going to attach the intake hose to our faceplate so that I don't have to try to do it down there in the door. I'm almost thinking of using a cinch clamp, because I don't think there's going to be enough space in there for an actual gear clamp to work properly there. So, although I don't have a cinch clamp that large. Son of a salamander. So I'm going to pinch this into a seam and then fold it over, and then I'm going to run the smallest gear clamp that I possibly can on there. Alright, so this is the result. Now, the reason why I was a bit concerned there was due to the actual gear clamp sticking out a little bit past the bore of this. I didn't want it to get stuck in the door. There's quite a bit of meat still on here, so don't think that the gear clamp is not on all the way or anything. It isn't on all the way, but I actually need more of this hose. So the hose is got between here and up there of meat onto this thing, so more than enough. And I want to make sure I've got enough hose. Oh yeah, plenty of hose to get up here. Alright, and there we have our fancy dancy combustion air intake and exhaust. We started it up after the fuel run to test out the smoke. I'm going to start it up again now to test out just how quiet that made things. We'll close the door so no ambient noise comes from outside and fire it up.
Start heating.
That'd be nice. I can very faintly hear that it's got ignition now. So really all I can hear is I can still hear the combustion chamber, but I can really just hear the fan speed increasing. Whereas before you could really hear that vibration kind of noise of the combustion taking place. Have a look outside for smoke and noise. We have the exhaust and the intake, both of which are keeping the noise to the outside instead of in here. So in here I do have the ticking from the fuel pump. The fuel pump can be replaced with a quiet fuel pump. I honestly don't care. Let's try this again for fun. So that thing creates such a restriction of flow that it will actually hold that cap on there. And when I pull it off, the hose shakes a little bit. All that doesn't come up very well on camera, but I'm telling you that take this damn thing off, it's not needed. Unless you got kids or something and you don't want them to stick their fingers in there, but I can assure you they'll only do it once. Alright, so I'm very pleased with the noise reduction. That's significant. Let's turn the fan down and see how quiet we can get this thing. We'll put it to just 3 bars instead of 10. So now the loudest thing is going to be the fuel pump. So 2 benefits: no negative pressure on the building, and very much so a reduction in noise. My only concern is with debris getting in there, so I'm going to have to rig up a screen, as well as frost accumulating on that said screen throughout the winter, because that likes to happen in Alberta. Alrighty then. So the next thing, all I wanted to do was that quick unboxing of the power supply. We're going to go ahead and quickly do that now. Alrighty, here, quick unboxing of the Vevor DC power supply. I've gone over the specs earlier in the video. This can be bought on Amazon, also known as the Jungle website. Protective cover. You have your analog voltmeter and amp meter, which is why I bought this one. That's what I wanted. Something just about the nostalgia of having an analog meter. And that's it. Little speaker wire type connectors on the front of this. These are only good for 3 amp. The cigarette lighter style socket or auxiliary style socket, good for 10 amp. On the back we have your output positive and negative for your 30 amp terminals. You have a fuse, and then you have a voltage switch here that can adjust your voltage. I'm not sure what voltage it adjusts when you put it to the bottom, but on the top switch is 13.8. The bottom one just says adjust. So what do you think? Should we do a quick fire up on this thing and see how it works? We can see how much amps this thing's pulling and whatnot. .8 volts. No amps. But we'll go ahead and turn this on and try to fire it up.
Start heating.
We are in manual mode, also known as level. Crank it right up. Now you'll get to see amp meter go up a bit as it turns on the glow plug. I'm expecting around 10 amps, maybe 11. You should see that jump up once it turns on. So if you remember from my other video, at the beginning it does a self-test. So now I hear that electronic noise, and you can see the amp meter is climbing. The electronic noise is coming from the heater and not this power supply. But it's slightly over 6 amps right now, which is surprising. I believe it must be the larger units use up to 10 or 11 amps. This little 2 kilowatt unit seems to only take about, it is just a hair over 6 amps. Now you see the amperage jumping there as the fuel pump kicked in. With the increase of the pump frequency and the fan. Still haven't gone over that. Oh, there you go. So you seen that quick drop there? That was the glow plug turning off. So now we're going to bounce between 1 and 2 amps. Alright, let's do a cool down. Now you're going to see on the cool down, that glow plug kicks back on again. So I guess we should see that amp meter climb back up to about 7 amps. So for those that think that it doesn't come back on, this should be proof here. We're right around 5 amps right now. And just a hair over 6 amps. So it should hold steady there, and the fan will run for a bit and whatnot. Alrighty, so the glow plug just shut off there, and now the fan's just going to run at an idle speed until it says, thanks for using. I hope you have a safe journey, or something like that. Once it's totally shut off and done its cool down, then we'll shut off the power supply and I'll switch it back to the battery. Alrighty, so we got our combustion gas intake ran to the outside now. We moved our fuel pump up a little bit higher so that the fuel doesn't create a siphon into the heater and cause it to overfuel on startup. Hopefully that's going to reduce the amount of smoke that happens on startup, because this is a brand new unit. Nothing should be plugged or clogged at this point, and I'm hoping that's going to reduce that amount of smoke. We tested out our power supply and was able to visualize the glow plug coming on and off and how much amperage a Vevor 2 kilowatt XMZ D2 is going to draw on average. So those are all great things to do. I'm going to go ahead and take this power supply back off, and I'm going to hook the heater back up to the battery. I don't think it's a good idea to run a power supply, just because you run the risk of, if there were ever a power outage, a hot shutdown on the heater, which would fry your heater. I think the battery and battery charger is a more expensive way, especially if you buy a dedicated battery and a charger just for this thing. That's going to be more expensive to go that route than this power supply. So yeah, happy with the power supply. This is all completely shut down now. We can shut it off. Looks like it's got a little bit of time before the capacitance drains down. I guess we'll see if we see any more white smoke or not, but that's really the only thing that concerns me now. I'm pretty confident in this heater. Like I said in the last video, I'm only impressed when things last me. There'll be upcoming videos on this heater and its fuel consumption in the future. If you don't want to miss those videos, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It's free and it really helps out the channel. If you found this video or any of my other videos on the Vevor heater, or any other builds that I'm doing with the bus or the RAV4, or traveling around, hit the like button on these videos for me. It would really help me out, and I do appreciate that, guys. That wraps up another video for us here on Mo's Adventures, and I do appreciate you guys watching. We'll catch you on the next one, and have yourselves a great day.